Hello, everyone. Welcome to NFL Inside the Lab. I am your host, Brian. I'm here, as always, with Matthew Freeman and Ian Hart. It is week 17. We got an interesting slate here, full of 16 games and teams with a variety of motivations. We're going to walk through some of the notable injury news that we just got, and then we'll spend some time answering your questions. As always, we'll pull those from the YouTube chat. So hop in there if you want to get your questions answered. Let me go and share my screen and let's jump right in, fellas. All right, here we go. Let's start with the New England Patriots. We got news, Ian, that we are going to have a shortened backfield, I think as expected, with Dion Lewis and Brandon Bolden. We see Lewis is just the absolute projected chalk at 31 to 40% ownership. What's going on with the backfield this morning, and what are your expectations for Lewis and the Patriots today?
Yeah, you said it, man. We saw last week where Dion Lewis worked as the lead back, and that was with Mike Gillislee active, but he actually hurt his knee during that game. So now the only active running backs for the Patriots are Dion Lewis, and Brandon Bolden. Last week, we only saw Bolden really come in for a handful of snaps at the end of the game. So there's a legitimate chance. I mean, Dion's going to be that full-time 3-down goal line back for the Pats this week. And he certainly has the skills to be very effective doing so. It's a double-digit favorite. We have seen the Patriots get creative in the past. I saw Danny Amendola had 2 snaps in the backfield last week, but I mean, assuming that, the Patriots kind of don't pull something random we haven't seen all year, yeah, Dion Lewis is going to be that guy.
Yeah, Freeman, last week we had to sort of measure what our thoughts on Dion Lewis were. He was cheaper last week, but we also had to deal with the fact that Gillislee might get some red zone touches. It seems like Dion Lewis is just going to get every touch, or at least, just a super majority of them. So what are your thoughts on Lewis as the chalk? Probably not a whole lot of takes there. He's a pretty obvious play. Curious your thoughts on a guy like Gronk. They obviously want to get him healthy for the playoffs as 15-point favorites. They're probably going to involve him early, but are you thinking that any of these players are going to have reduced snaps today?
It's interesting. So talking about Lewis, I think, ride the lightning. The great thing with him is that he had 5 targets in that last game. And Brandon Bolden is a core special teamer. So although I think he could have some sneaky potential as a runner, like a few years ago, we did see him get some snaps out of the backfield. And he was a decent runner in college, so there theoretically could be some potential for him. But I don't think they want to risk having a guy like him injured, because he actually is important to special teams, and that's important to the team. Like, they focus on everything. So I think it is going to be Lewis. And then for Gronk, he had a big game last game against the Jets. I believe it was in week 6. I think 10 targets, good production. Was it like 2 touchdowns? I mean, it's going to be, it's a game where Gronk could absolutely smash. So if you want to pay up for tight ends, and it's a spot where there is enough value in the slate, I think, where you can pay up for a tight end and maybe feel comfortable with it, then Gronk is, clearly the guy. It's just a question of whether you want to pay up for tight ends or not. Like, that's always the question with tight ends.
For sure. Let's keep on moving here. Let's go to the Cincinnati Bengals. Ian, got some word on Mixon this morning, I hope?
Yeah, it's looking like he's going to suit up. He didn't get back to a full practice at all this week. And, he just had this ankle injury last Sunday. So tough to say if he's really 100%. Really tough situation now. I mean, we were looking at Gio earlier in the week, but that was kind of under the assumption he'd be this full-fledged feature back. I mean, it's a very tough matchup. Bengals playoff hopes are dead. Ravens, need this one and obviously have a great rush defense. So with Mixon available there, and really can't guarantee he'll be the absolute feature guy, might be a situation to avoid potentially.
For sure. Probably not a whole lot more to say there. Freeman, let's go ahead and move to the Dallas Cowboys. Your team. So we got word that they're not going to rest their starters. So I'm curious your thoughts on that and whether you think that is truthful.
I mean, that might be truthful, but I still don't see the upside, especially in cash games, in investing in a team that has no motivation and for much of the season hasn't really played all that well anyway. Going against the best team in the league, especially when that team is saying that they're also going to be playing some of their starters. So I don't think it's a good situation. If you want some GPP exposure because you think ownership is going to be too low, that's one thing. But I think absolutely hands off for everyone in cash games.
Yeah, Ian, what are your thoughts on these guys? I think especially Zeke. I think people are probably curious about him.
It's interesting. It's good that we at least got some confirmation with the Eagles will be resting 6 defensive starters. I mean, I believe 2 of their defensive ends, a linebacker, safety, and corner. So it's going to be a completely different unit than we've really seen out there this season. With that said, I mean, it's still the Cowboys on a road game in Philly. I just can't. I mean, in the preseason, like the Cowboys didn't play Dak Prescott because Tyron Smith was not going to be on the field, and now Tyron Smith is still out with his back injury, but they're going to go ahead and play Dak. So it's kind of confusing to me that they're letting their offense go out without arguably the most important player on their team. But, if they really feel like this is a must-win game, then maybe Zeke can overcome some bad blocking and still get the job done.
It's almost as if their coach doesn't quite know what he's doing. Almost. The clapper, yeah. Melvin Gordon. Let's talk about him. Let's go to the LA Chargers. Ian, we know that the Chargers are motivated. They need to win this game. What's going on with him? I know he's been on the injury report all week.
Yeah, it does kind of sound like he's playing because it is such a big game for them. I'm not certain he's really 100% healthy, but every report we've gotten is that he's going to be out there and give it a go. Even though he isn't healthy, man, you said it. It's their, this is their season, and their running back situation doesn't really help them much to ease his burden. Austin Eckler, who's had, plenty of good games this year, is still wearing that club on his hand, so he's in a special teams only role. Brandon Oliver isn't bad, but he's also a guy that they've made a healthy scratch all season until he was absolutely needed. So, great matchup for Melvin. And even though he does have this ankle thing, he could potentially still wind up playing a lot, I think, with the season on the line.
Yeah, Freeman, he's obviously a tough guy to try to analyze here. He is 7-4. This is a must-win game. He's at home. The Chargers are a touchdown favorite. That is a situation in which we probably want to buy Melvin Gordon, but then we have to factor in this injury. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, as you mentioned, he's always good as a home favorite. So there could be 2 thoughts of this. One would be that he's so inefficient anyway that what does it matter if he's just a little more inefficient based on the injury? As long as he's getting like enough snaps and getting the goal line touches, it doesn't really matter that much if he's just a little more inefficient. On the other hand, you could say like his inefficiency is already so bad that if he's just a little bit more efficient, he's basically someone you can't play at all. I don't know. I think you can go ahead and play him, but probably not in cash, just in case he tweaks that injury, which I think is possible. It's a pretty significant injury. As Ian said, he probably wouldn't be playing if it weren't a situation where the Chargers needed a win and they didn't have other guys that they could rely on. So I think he's going out there because they need him. A good spot, but not for cash, because I think it's pretty easy to see how he could re-injure that ankle.
Also, is there a situation, either of you can answer this, in which, Phillip Rivers, Keenan Allen goes off for 2 touchdowns, all of a sudden they're up 2 touchdowns and they elect to not just run Melvin Gordon into the line just to get him healthy for next week?
Yeah, I mean, that could definitely happen. That I think is what Brandon Oliver is the perfect player for. Yeah. Like you don't care. You just put him out there for 20 touches. You let him take the pounding. And yeah, that's like the best case scenario, I think, for the Chargers. That's probably what they would love to see happen.
Yeah. So in that case, I think that makes Melvin Gordon a little risky in cash games for sure. Let's keep on moving here. Don't know if there's a whole lot to analyze. We did get word that Matt Forte for the Jets are going to be out. As mentioned, the Jets are massive road dogs. Ian, nothing to play for. Does this move the needle at all?
I mean, I know there's nothing to play for, but this is a Jets team. They haven't had anything to play for the last few weeks, really, since McCown went down, and they've still been playing hard under Bowles and everything. So I think, they've kind of proven this year they're a little bit above that 1 to 2 worst team in the league category. I think it is big. Forte's out. I mean, we still have basically minuscule projected ownership on Bilal and Elijah McGuire. I think there's so many value plays this week that, it's the Jets. It's who wants to really pay attention to them. But we have seen both these guys produce all season, and really, Forte as well. When one of these Jets running backs is out and we can condense the carries a little bit, and they're getting a Pats D that really hasn't impressed anyone all season, and they're missing Alan Branch, who's basically their 6'6", 340 run stuffer in the middle. So I think there's some opportunity here. I know, road double-digit dogs isn't the exact situation we want, but with minuscule ownership, we've at least seen Bilal take over these types of games before.
Freeman, did he sell you?
Yeah, I mean, I've been sold forever. Like it's Powell. Look at what he did at the end of last season when Forte was out. He absolutely smashed. And as Ian said, we see it when one of those guys is out. The other Jets running back really has an opportunity to shine. And often, even if he doesn't explode, he still has a decent enough game. And I don't think it's that big of a deal that the Jets are big dogs. Like they're basically always big underdogs. And because Powell is a guy who functions really well as a receiver, it's not the end of the world. Like receptions are worth more than carries. It's
Right.
not a big deal for him to get his work through the receiving game. So
Yeah.
I like it a lot.
Okay. Let's keep on moving. We hit on one more team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Some of these wide receivers have been popping up on the injury report. Ian, what's going on here?
Yeah, we're tentatively expecting Deshaun Jackson to suit up. He missed last week with an ankle injury, but it's a situation where he's still been limited in practice all week. Chris Godwin, who we've seen come in and have some good games when Jackson or Evans is out, he's dealing with an ankle injury and not 100%. And Cam Brate has like a hip and knee issue. So a lot of banged up guys going on, which is part of the reason why we're kind of thinking Marshawn Lattimore could spend a lot more time on Mike Evans this time around. He didn't exactly follow him in their first matchup, but one of those situations where maybe having, so many injuries on the to teammates doesn't necessarily help Evans because now the matchups could be a little harder and the Saints can really focus on him more than they otherwise could.
Cool. Freeman, any thoughts on this one before we move on?
No, I think it's about a wash. He might see a little more target volume, but probably be a little more inefficient.
Yeah. All right. Let's touch on some of these teams that we do know are going to rest some players and talk about the implications. Let's start with the Kansas City Chiefs. We got word that obviously they're going to rest Alex Smith. We have Mahomes, who we think is definitely interesting. We also have interesting running back situation with Hunt and his injury status. Ian, I'll kick to you first. What's going on with the backfield? And then what are your thoughts on Mahomes and the offense this week?
Yeah, Akeem has had this small shoulder issue. It's not expected to keep him out of the game or anything, but something you'll want to just make sure when inactives come through around 2:30. But yeah, Charkandrick West got ruled out with an illness, so we're really only expecting the Chiefs mostly to revolve this running game around Akeem Hunt. I mean, Kareem's we haven't gotten any word that he will be resting. We got word Tyreek's already out and Alex Smith's out, so wouldn't be shocking if they end up resting Kareem as well. And even if he's active, I mean, it'd be hard to see him taking too many carries away from Akeem.
For me, like it's a little weird that like they're not resting Kareem, right?
I mean, they haven't said one way or another. Ian can correct me if I'm wrong, but they haven't said one way or another what's happening with Kelsey and what's happening with Kareem. I think they might play for a series or something, maybe, but maybe not even that. So it's really intriguing. If Charkandrick is out with Kareem out, a lot of touches could be in store for Akeem. So I don't know for people who are playing that later slate, or I don't know. I think some GPP exposure is definitely warranted there.
Sure. Two more teams I think we could hit on as far as rest goes. Meant to click on the Eagles. There we go. Ian, what are your thoughts on the situation here? We have some of these guys in, like Nick Foles is going to get the start apparently, but what are your expectations as far as, how much they'll actually play with the number one seed already locked up?
Yeah, so the word is that Foles is going to be out there for 3 to 4 series. And basically Doug Peterson said he's going to kind of pull the rest of his starters out by the field of the game. They've already Jay Ajayi is a healthy scratch, so he'll be resting. So that helps dwindle down the running back situation a little bit. It's any of these wide receivers, it's just so tough to say what their snap counts are going to be. Maybe, deep GP flyer on a speedster like Mac Hollins if you think he's going to get a few extra snaps. But I think really the only guy in this offense I'm even a little bit interested in is LeGarrette Blount. He's got some contract incentives where if he gains, I think, 30 or 40 more yards, he can make some money. And he seems like the type of guy with the season on the line where they're not using him with a dry anyway. So what better way to kind of keep your offense healthy than give Blount the ball as many times as possible?
Yeah, that's interesting, the narrative there. The issue with Blount, of course, not a super involved guy in the passing game, and they are dogs. Freeman, what are your thoughts on Blunt and maybe any other guys you want in the offense?
Yeah, I might actually be a little more interested in Corey Clement, but it's just so hard to know how they're going to divide the work, just based on what they're doing. But Clement, he does get some work in the passing game, not a lot, but some work. And Blunt's basically a zero in the passing game. So he's maybe a little more interesting. And just because he's further down on the depth chart, I could see them eventually not wanting to risk an injury to Blunt and taking him out a little bit sooner and really having Corey Clement like it's a preseason game, like preseason week 4, just getting the bulk of the work there, especially in the second half. So he's someone I may be interested in, but I think it's pretty hands off for this team.
All right. One more, I think. Pittsburgh Steelers looks like they're going to rest quite a few of their guys, specifically Le'Veon and Ben Roethlisberger. Ian, what about some of the pass catchers? And then what are your thoughts on, some of these other guys, whether it's, Stephen Ridley as a home favorite? I guess maybe we can start. What are your expectations on the backfield, the sort of touch breakdown?
Yeah, so like you said, we know Ben and Le'Veon's out, and they have a few starting linemen that are going to rest as well. Really tough to know with this backfield. It's we saw Ridley he's only been with the team for a few weeks anyway and was out of football for about a year and a half before that. So really hasn't shown us anything other than a few carries of mop-up time that he really has what it takes to do much. And obviously Fitzgerald Toussaint was a guy who got his job taken by James Conner pretty quickly before he got hurt. So, with this backfield, for me, it's a tough matchup against the Browns, top ranked defense and rush DVOA, or if they're not top anymore, they're still pretty high. And I think the bigger spot for DFS purposes is Juju and Martavis. We have gotten word that they're expected to play at least, a good amount of this game and play their snaps. And we saw last year in week 17, Landry Jones still managed to go for 275 yards and 3 touchdowns against this Browns defense. So with so much uncertainty in the backfield and a tougher matchup, I think if you do want exposure to this game, to keep it on the outside is probably the way to go.
Yeah, Freeman, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. This is like a spot where it's sad to me that Terrell Watson is no longer in the league. I would have loved to have seen him tear up the spot, but yeah, I think probably the pass catchers is it's probably the way to go if you're looking for something. But it's so hard. Are they going to risk injury to Juju, especially with Antonio Brown probably not healthy for the beginning of the playoffs? Are they going to risk injury for Martavis Bryant? So I'll be interested to see how quickly they pull those guys. One guy who is more interesting is Vance McDonald. I could see him getting more run, and then going against that Browns defense that is one of the worst in the league against tight ends, I could see him getting more action.
Cool. All right, let's get to some user questions for just a couple more minutes here before we get out of here. The myth, the legend asks, what is going to be the shootout game? Freeman, is that an obvious answer? Is it Falcons Panthers?
I don't know. I don't know if there's a game that you can point to and be like, oh, this is definitely the shootout game. Yeah. In terms of game totals, right, the highest, if you look at our Vegas page, is Saints at Buccaneers. That was at 50.5. It moved down to 48, and now it's at 49. But just because it's week 17, you're just looking at this slate, and there really are no games where you can feel pretty strong that there's going to be a shootout.
It's ugly.
I don't know. Maybe the Patriots game, to be honest. They're still going to be playing to win. Their defense isn't all that great. At points, the Jets have been pretty good. So I don't know. But there's no game that I feel comfortable saying oh, this is the shootout game. Yeah, you know what? Actually, one more. Maybe Redskins at Giants. I know that feels weird, but Kirk Cousins, he still can do it. The Giants defense is horrible. They could give up a lot of points. And then the Giants offense is so unpredictable, and the Redskins defense isn't really all that good. I could see how that one shoots out.
Interesting. All right. So got a question on the Giants asking about Wayne Gallman. Ian, what's the backfield situation in York right now? And do you want any part of this game? Did Freeman sell you on it at all?
No, that's a sharp reply right there. Wayne Gallman's been freaking balling lately. He's eaten up receptions. I'm not quite – the thing is, he hasn't just taken over the backfield or anything. He's getting these receptions, but Vereen's still involved. Darkwood's still involved. I'm not they haven't exactly been like the, it's not like he's going out wide and kind of burning safeties on slants or anything. Just kind of getting checkdowns. But when there's no one else on this offense, I mean, Ingram's out, Shepard's out, even like Tavares King's out. There are no options here. And I think, it is reasonable to expect them to continue checking it down without really anywhere to throw it on the outside. So, yeah, I think Gallman, especially that receiving floor he's exhibited over the last few weeks, is definitely an option.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, I don't think Gallman is actually like a good player, but he is an average of 10 carries over the past 3 weeks. And then in terms of the targets, right, it's been ridiculous, 8, 7, and 9 over the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, he's been like a number one wide receiver.
Yeah, like that's legit, like good change of pace back, like committee back type of usage that you would want out of someone like, I don't know, like Danny Woodhead if he were still playing. So it's pretty good.
Good question here from Jeff McLean. He's asking specifically about the Browns' defense, but we can sort of open it up with some teams that are going to rest like offensive linemen or just some of their best players. Like, are there any defenses that are standing out that may not have earlier in the week? Ian, and I'll kick to you.
I like the man, it's tough for me to get behind the Browns defense, even though they're pretty healthy. We've seen them healthy all year, and it's been brutal. I like the 49ers defense a little bit this week. We've seen them really since Reuben Foster, who fell way too far to them in the draft. Once he's been healthy, they've really been able to almost shed this. It's incredible, man. They were like the worst defense against running backs for the better part of the last year and a half, but since their bye week, they've gone 4 straight games, allowing fewer than 100 yards rushing. So that's one of the reasons why I'm a little softer, I think, on Malcolm Brown than others. There's so much uncertainty in this game. And I mean, yeah, like the Rams, normally if you can replace Malcolm Brown with Todd Gurley in just a one-on-one situation, that's great. But with a new offensive line without Whitworth playing, we got Lance Dunbar out there getting plenty of receiving grind. We've never seen anything that Sean Mannion can do at quarterback. So yeah, I'll take a bunch of uncertain pieces on offense and see if this 49ers team can make some plays.
Yeah,
Freeman
absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. And one of the good things is that people they don't tend to think as much about how offenses and defenses like go together. So Reuben Foster, huge addition to that defense, missed a lot of the first half of the year, but then also like the addition of Jimmy Garoppolo, that's changed the way that opposing offenses attack their defense. And so like it's a good complementary situation where the 49ers are able to sustain some more drives. They're putting more points on the board. And so that means that opposing offenses can't just run the ball at will against the 49ers. So it's a really good spot.
Definitely. Got a good question here. So the Saints team is the team with one of the higher implied point totals. This game does have the highest Vegas over under. So the question, Ingram or Kamara, Friedman?
I mean, I don't know.
Throw a dart.
I mean, whatever. I don't know. Like, I would say, like, have you been riding one of them with success up to this point in the season? Just keep riding that one. Like, I mean, people are kind of split in their own particular ways about them. And I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't know. Kamara is he's the more versatile guy, but I think his usage is a little more volatile. So I think you can more predictively say that Ingram is going to get a certain amount of touches, and you can have an idea of what that's going to look like. But Kamara, I think, is the guy with the higher upside. So I don't know. I would sort of use that to shade whichever way you're leaning. If you want more consistency, maybe Ingram, more upside, maybe Kamara, but it's basically the same thing.
Yeah, there's an interesting narrative point here by Eric Patton in chat. Sean Payton, is there like a narrative that he would showcase Kamara to get Rookie of the Year?
I don't think that has much to do with anything. I don't think Peyton's thinking about that at all. Like, oh, I've got to get my guy Rookie of the Year. I mean, maybe, but I don't think that's like something that's incentivizing him at all.
I think there's
maybe Kamara's thinking about it. I don't know.
I was going to say, I think there's one thing we can look at with this game, though, is real quick. Michael Thomas. So he's healthy and he's going to be out there and everything, but he had this hamstring injury pop up last Saturday. And even though he ended up playing, he played a season low, 41 snaps, only saw 5 targets. So he was limited in practice again this week. I would just caution with him that he might not have his usual workload based on what we saw last week and the Saints, already basically being in the playoffs. I know they still have some to play for, but might not be seeing our usual Michael Thomas today.
Cool. Okay, I think we are going to end it there. Definitely good luck this week, guys. Thank you for joining us all year. We'll probably have some more videos and stuff throughout the playoffs, but thank you for joining us every week during the regular season. Good luck today, and have a Happy New Year's.